Hello there, trust your Friday is coming on well this 18th day of the month of June 2021. My name is Grace Josephine. A very warm welcome. A funeral service for the late businessman Chris Kirubi is underway at the Faith Evangelistic Ministries Karen here in Nairobi, with leaders and businessmen present eulogizing him as a businessman who was passionate about his work. Let's cross over there live and listen in.
Fulfilling his purpose, Chris was a man whose life was grounded in extraordinary faith in his ability to triumph over in Matthew 21:21. Truly I tell you, if you have faith and do not doubt, not only can you do what was done to the fig tree, but also you can say to this, go through yourself into the sea and it will be done. And there's a lot of testaments that are being given of what this great man of faith did. It was his faith that gave him the fortitude to fight the disease for 4 years, overcoming all the odds that have been cited by doctors and experts. Second, Chris was a dreamer. Chris was 17, that in faith and God's will, he could call those things that are not as if they are. That was a faith that underpinned his vision to dream about building new cities. Examples are Bipingo in the coast, Two Rivers in Nairobi, Palmarina in Uganda, all of which he dreamed that he could do, and he did simultaneously. The odds and the risks were never really relevant. One of the things he mentioned to me many times was that obstacles are those frightful things you see when you take your eyes off the goal. Chris's eyes were always fixed on his goals, and obstacles and risks were mere inconveniences to be overcome. The third one was that Chris was a man of courage, a man who respected himself and others, and who also demanded to be respected. A man who had the courage to pursue his vision no matter how daunting the odds were, confident that any trials were only temporary and that he would in the end conquer. Chris believed that he could overcome any situation. He knew that faith and abundance could not exist in an environment of fear and lack of faith. When I visited him in the United States in late 2017, in hospital at a time when he was critically ill, he asked me to bring him designs for the house that he was constructing. This was a time when many people would be putting their affairs in order. One of the evenings when we were with him, while praying with him, he asked that I read for him Mark 6, verse 5 to 6. That's a verse where Jesus went to his home village, and it says he could not do any miracles there, except lay his hands on a few sick people and heal them. He was amazed by their lack of faith. Chris told me that miracles are not performed in an environment of lack of faith, and that's why he was building his house, even in the midst of his sickness, because he believed he was going to overcome it. Chris was a mentor. Chris was a man who worked hard to develop other leaders. Like Moses mentored a young Joshua, Chris has mentored several generations of leaders. Many of whom are in the church today, many of whom have spoken, many of whom are following online today. Chris was a student of the biblical Moses. Ask any leader that Chris has mentored, and they will tell you that they've experienced at least 3 of these attributes. Chris empowered people and gave them authority, no matter how young. Chris provided his mentees with experience and opportunity to apply themselves. You've heard for yourselves the testimonies that have been given. Chris gave all those he mentored encouragement and affirmation. Our challenges as his mentees, as those who have been the beneficiaries, is to do unto others as Chris has done unto us, and to speak life into those who we have had the opportunity to lead, so that we too can be fruitful and multiply. The fifth, Chris was generous. Chris was extraordinarily generous. He multiplied that which God blessed him, and he gave it out freely. I was privy to many of his donations and contributions, which were either anonymous or that he requested be kept confidential. The sixth one was Chris was an eagle. Chris was an eagle who flew at high altitude and kept the company of other eagles, and you've heard them. And he sought them. He soared way above small noisy birds like parrots, sparrows, and crows. His seeming weak skin was perhaps because he was out of the hearing range of the noisy chirping of parrots and the crows in his life. He was a true ego who soared way above the chattering parrots, and that is probably why many people never really understood him. Seventh, Chris was a love of knowledge. Chris loved knowledge. He educated himself to the highest possible level. He constantly challenged his assumptions and was constantly innovating. He was a man surrounded by books in his office, at home, and in his bags. He carried books wherever he went, and he bought books wherever we traveled. Finally, he enabled many people to acquire knowledge. And I've seen Governor King there, and he can give you testimony to the 250 people who have students who've gotten scholarships in Vipingo, courtesy of Chris. Chris heeded the advice in Hosea 4:6. My people are destroyed from lack of knowledge. Finally, Chris loved life, and he was not anxious. Chris ate life with a big spoon. In an empire as large as his, it was inevitable that at any given time, one or two of his companies would be facing one challenge or another. Chris had reasons to be anxious. However, Chris was never anxious, even in the face of seemingly daunting and overwhelming personal challenges. Chris lived Paul's advice in Philippians 4:6. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your mind. This is my honest and faithful account of this great man that we lay to rest. Matthew 7:16 has given us the scale to weigh the worth of a man, and says you shall know them by their fruits. It goes on to say that every good tree bears good fruit. Chris has borne good fruit. He was a good man. He was a great man. He was a man of impact. A creator, a man who fulfilled his purpose, a man who employed the extraordinary talents that God had given him in obedience of God's command to be fruitful. The great writer and poet George Bernard Shaw must have had men like Chris in mind when he penned that immortal poem, A Splendid Torch. This is a true joy of life, the being used for a mighty purpose, the being a force of nature instead of a selfish clod of ailments and grievances, complaining that the world will not devote itself to making you happy. I'm of the opinion that my life belongs to the whole community, and as long as I live, it is my privilege to do for it whatever I can. I want to be thoroughly used up when I die. For the harder I work, the more I live. I rejoice in life for its own sake. Life is no brief candle for me. It is a sort of splendid torch which I got hold of for a moment, and I want to make it burn as brightly as possible before handing it on to future generations. Chris was thoroughly used up by the time he rested. His life belonged to the whole community. He worked to the end. He obeyed God's command and was fruitful. His faith shines through in his works and the lives of those whom he has touched. Christopher John Kirubi has fulfilled his purpose, and we thank God for his long and fruitful life. He did not do this alone, and on his behalf I thank all those who worked closely with him, those who loved him, and enabled him to achieve all that he did in his lifetime. I thank God for having given me the rare opportunity to directly share with Chris what he meant to me, and to personally thank him for all that he has been and done in my life. Christopher John Kirubi now belongs to the ages. Fare thee well, our leader, our friend, our mentor. Fare thee well till we meet again.
Glad to know.
The mogul will be buried on Saturday, that is tomorrow, the 19th of June, at his